Hi, I'm Gabriella. Today I will be responding to the claim that the highest death rate involves suicide over death in war, murder, and natural disasters combined. The opponent's secondary claims include suicide is the highest leading cause of death. 90% of people who die by suicide have a diagnosable psychiatric disorder at the time of their death. And lastly, the statistics of suicide. So responding to the first claim that suicide is the highest leading cause of death, the writer listed some statistics stating that about 44,965 reported suicide deaths. A person dies by suicide about every 11.7 minutes in the U.S., and then 123 Americans take their own life every day. Normally, these statistics would be deemed invalid evidence because the writer of the speech did not include a works cited page. I decided to do research to make sure that what she was saying was valid. Whilst all of these seem to be true, the writer does not give any indication on the statistics that relate these deaths to her claim that suicide is a result of death, war, murder, and natural disasters. So it just doesn't support her claim at all. And then my response to the second claim, that 90% of all people who die by suicide have a diagnosable psychiatric disorder at the time of their death. She just listed evidence underneath that 50% of people who commit suicide suffer from major depression. More Americans suffer from depression than coronary heart disease, cancer, HIV, AIDS. It affects 5 to 8% of Americans ages 18 and over in a given year. Again, this doesn't really it doesn't relate to the claim supporting, it doesn't support that these are caused by death, war, murder, or natural disasters. But I did do research on the New England Journal of Medicine states that the degree to which cause mental health problems is being debated. Some studies show that there are only minimal health effects, if any. My response to the third claim that, she just said statistics of suicide. She listed a bunch of gender disparities, that males are 4 times higher to have committed suicide, females attempt suicide 3 times as often as males. This has nothing to do with the claim. It doesn't support the fact that the highest death rate involves suicide over death in war, murder, and natural disasters combined again. So I did some research on death after war, and the statistic from Washington Post says that 22 veterans die per day by suicide. However, the acknowledged significant limitations in their available data, including people incorrectly identified as veterans on death certificates. It is recommended that the estimated number of veterans be interpreted with caution due to the use of data from a sample of states and existing evidence of uncertainty in veteran identifiers on the U.S. Death certificates. So that proves that the war, death over war is kind of inaccurate, and the evidence is inaccurate. And that's it.
Well, frankly, I don't remember much about the argument that it was originally presented. It doesn't sound like there's a dispute on this issue. What the cause of suicide is, or whether or not suicide is a result of war, disaster, or death, none of this is striking a bell in my head, and it doesn't really seem to suggest that there is an argument. So I don't know what's in dispute here. You seem to be going after some of the statistics to suggest maybe there are some minor problems there. On the first point, You criticize the lack of sourcing, which I think is an appropriate thing to point out, but when you're dealing with factual data, it's probably not that big a deal. It sounds like you found the information to be pretty accurate. The number of people who die each year or each day as a result of suicide doesn't seem to be something on which there's dispute. The notion on the next point, though, that the suicides are related to depression, okay, so is the controversy that what causes the depression? Is the controversy about whether people are getting enough treatment for depression? I would think that it would be a given that depression would be a big part of why people commit suicide. And again, I'm kind of befuddled as to what the controversy was on this particular point. You go after it by simply suggesting that there isn't a link to death, natural disasters, or war, and maybe there wasn't. I don't remember if that's what the advocate's claim was. And as a consequence, you might be perfectly right on this, but still, I'm not sure what you gain by making that particular argument. There's a piece of evidence that you read from the New England Journal of Medicine. I don't even know what it says. You read it, and I'm not sure what conclusion or inference I'm supposed to draw from that information. It was so ambiguous. And I think that this is one of the problems with the whole argument so far, is that there's a lot of ambiguity. And then, the last point, there's a discussion about the different groups and the disparities in their suicide rates. And you seem to accept the notion that men and women commit suicide at different rates. Again, I don't know why that mattered and what inference was being drawn from that. It sounds like it's a pretty straightforward piece of factual data. The information about the number of veterans who commit suicide, you do have a challenge on that, which basically suggests that it might be overestimated because some of the people who are identified as veterans may not be veterans. So if we dropped it down to 17 veterans a day commit suicide, how does that make a difference to the argument? What is the impact of this? And once again, I'm still not sure what the argument is about. What is it that's in dispute? What it is that motivates people to commit suicide? There's just uncertainty here all around as to why it is I'm listening to this presentation or to the original presentation. So I'm afraid it's a little unsatisfying. The way everything's coming together. That may be the fault of the original argument as well as some of the things that you're talking about. All right, thank you.